Hi, everyone. In this episode, UserTesting's Chief Operating Officer, Josh Maltz, talks with Craig Nishisaki from UpTop about how to get executive buy-in for experience research. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Insights Unlocked, an original podcast from UserTesting, where we bring you candid conversations and stories with the thinkers, doers, and builders behind some of the most successful digital products and experiences in the world, from concept to execution.
Welcome to the Insights Unlocked podcast, recording live at UserTesting's The Human Insights Summit. And joining us today as host is Josh Maltz, UserTesting's Chief Operating Officer. Welcome, Josh.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here, Nathan.
And our guest today is Craig Nishisaki, Head of Business Development at UpTop, a UX consultancy based here in Seattle. Craig leads UpTop's business development team and is responsible for new account acquisition and account development across a portfolio of clients including Amazon, Everbridge, F5, and Microsoft. Welcome to the show, Craig.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
To tee up our conversation, we asked UX researchers and the UserTesting Contributor Network their thoughts on the challenges with getting executive buy-in on customer insights. Here's what they said.
What are some of the challenges with getting executive buy-in on customer insights and UX research? Because they've already got quite a firm idea in their mind. I would say that that's the point where it's a little bit of a challenge, where perhaps it's not necessarily what they want to hear or they hope to hear.
The other thing I can think of is because UX research is quite a small group and because it's qualitative research, there's such a focus in my company in terms of like, what's the revenue opportunity here? Can you quantify that?
Sometimes there's a bit of urgency with certain features, and there's stakeholders that would like to bypass UX research just to save time and get things to market quicker.
Excellent to see those highlights. And really it conveys to me the challenges that we're having in connecting the dots to business value from experience. And I'm curious, Craig, after watching the video, what were your thoughts?
In watching the video, I think one of the challenges is as a individual contributor on a team, getting too tactical too soon instead of trying to understand the language or convey the language of business and stay at that higher level and really understand what they're trying to accomplish through the research and using the research as the method or the tool to help suss out that insight. So I thought that was interesting, that the folks that answered the question. So yeah.
And I'm curious what you said about the individual contributor connecting to a team and ultimately connecting higher in an organization. What do you find with your clients are means to connecting the dots there at the different layers of the organization?
That's a great question. I think I don't want to stereotype or put people into a box, but what we've seen in different organizations, we work with a lot of mid to large size enterprises. And if they have a smaller research team, let's say an individual or maybe two spread across multiple different teams or different initiatives, oftentimes those folks are basically being told, here's what we're trying to accomplish. How can we do this? And they start thinking about it tactically, the methods, the process, or the study that they're going to perform. And in a lot of cases, may even lose sight of what the ultimate goal is. And I think taking a step back and just asking the question, what's the business's goal in all this, and what's the real pain point that we're trying to understand, I think is helpful. And, in a lot of ways, being an outside consultant is helpful because you don't have to be the person that knows all the answers when you're walking in terms of context. And so it gives you a chance to ask questions and be a little bit more curious.
That makes a lot of sense, and that consultative mindset absolutely unlocks doors. Appreciate that perspective. So although leaders in UX outperform the market, getting executive buy-in is consistently challenging. So wanting to know top of mind for you, why is that? And related to this, who in the organization should be involved in getting that executive buy-in?
That's a great question. From doing this, from being in the industry for a while and seeing the patterns, it's typically culture or mindset and bias, if you think about it in those groupings. So Culture-wise, are they an innovative culture or are they efficiency-driven culture? If they're innovative or innovation-oriented, then they're more interested or open to experimentation and ideation and looking for different insights, perhaps. If they're efficiency-driven, oftentimes they're looking to cut costs or cut timeframes to deliver. And a lot of times those are engineering-driven organizations, and you'll hear things like, well, let's get it out there, let's ship, and then we'll test later. And the challenge there oftentimes is you've spent this time and effort to build something and test it later, and it misses the mark. And then from a mindset perspective, are they open-minded or closed-minded in terms of the individuals that you're talking to and that are part of the initiative? From a buyer perspective, right? From my perspective, if I'm trying to sell UX services or research to them, it's really thinking about or identifying if they're closed-minded. Do they need to be the smartest person in the room, or are they open-minded in terms of looking for other insights and looking for ideas that'll help them move the ball or move the needle? And then thirdly is the bias or the point of view they have, and this is more nuanced. I think a lot of times you'll hear it as, we've identified all the problems. We just need some help thinking through how we would execute on a solution, or we have all the requirements in the BRD, and if you have any questions, you can ask me, right? And underlying all that, if you think about it, what they're saying is, research is going to cost money, it's going to take time, and we're going to find out what we already know. And I think that bias, if you can identify it, then you can start helping them reframe their point of view in the process.
Now, that was really powerful, particularly the your comments around culture and bias. And I'm curious, in your engagements with customers, do you frequently see an evolution where you enter an engagement where it is almost as you're describing, where there's a hypothesis they're very much wanting to move forward with, but through your approach, you're able to unlock some fresh perspectives?
That's a great question. A great example would be, we have a client that's been with us a number of years, and he's moved organizations and as he's had opportunities to go from a director level to a CMO level. And initially, when we worked with him at Microsoft, there was when Microsoft was shifting from a field selling organization to a digital inside sales organization. And they needed to create a platform to onboard, train, and enable up to 6,000 salespeople worldwide. And when we first started doing the envisioning work with them, we didn't have the opportunity to speak to any end users, any sellers. It was all stakeholder driven. And part of that was because of a compressed time frame. Part of it was just culture at the time. But once we got that initial prototype out and they had a chance to test it with end users and saw the power of getting their feedback and understanding what worked and what didn't work, ever since that time, every project we've worked on, every initiative, from envisioning how enterprise organization would work with a new market, like a SMB market, or how they would reimagine their product offerings after a merger and acquisition or an acquisition, how the products would be positioned as a solution or a product in their portfolio, things like that. Every single time he said, we need to do some research. And so I think once you see insights and value, you can't unsee it. And so then you say, we need to do that more. And you see the value in the investment.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I like the notion of we need to do it more once you receive that proof point. Very powerful. So I guess from the video and, reflecting for myself on what I frequently hear back from the field at UserTesting is that, one of the challenges to getting that executive buy-in is connecting it back to business goals and the metrics executives care most about. How do you see teams can do a better job of connecting to those metrics and those business values?
Yeah. I think you have to start by thinking about it from their perspective, right? It's, what's the real business goal? What's the real problem they're trying to solve? What have they tried so far? asking these questions, doing the research before you do the research, if you will, and understanding their personal motivation. And really, it boils down to, in a lot of cases, how did they get their bonus? To be able to really reframe the conversation so that they understand it, right? The value of doing this work. And not just research, but also, the design process, prototyping, concept testing, things like that. Not just the upfront research of it. And then, for us, where we've seen the most impact, what we believe is, and this is where some people may disagree, but most companies focus on customer delight as their metric for CX or even for UX. And I would argue that reducing friction and eliminating friction is really where we should focus, because those moments of reducing friction ultimately then generate that delight. And so if you think about it, customer delight, according to Gartner and CEB, only happens 16% of the time, but increases the operating cost by 10 to 20%. If you think about reducing friction to get to that end state of delight, right, ultimately, the two biggest reasons you think of that delight is so hard to achieve is people want their basic needs met, right, with minimal effort at whatever stage in the journey they are. And people have different definitions of delight and different expectations based on where they are in the journey. And so if your goal is to meet the delight mark, how do you actually do that effectively? Whereas if you could identify moments in the customer journey that are causing friction and then test those and improve those and iterate those along the way, you can have a bigger impact on the overall user experience and ultimately the customer experience, I think. So when we think about metrics, we start, working from the end and working backwards, or thinking about the end goal and working backwards, the desired future state and working backwards. And to do that, you have to understand who it is that's going to be using this and what's the biggest problem they have, right, and all that. And, as we're reframing the conversation for the executive to think about those metrics. So I don't know if that answered your question wholly, but that kind of gives you my point of view on where to focus.
It does, and I'm interested to go maybe a layer deeper on the idea of uncovering those moments of friction. Is this something that is measurable? Is it truly subjective? What do you think are the best approaches for identifying moments of friction?
I don't think it's subjective. I think, if you're thinking about an overall strategy for improving customer experience or user experience, you have to have the voice of the customer. You have to have the journeys, customer journey map, the buyer journey all the way through the customer journey, end to end, and then the personas. And I think for a lot of organizations, those things become artifacts that are stuck on the shelf and collect dust. And what they need to be is living entities that get reviewed and iterated upon as things change. And, as I was mentioning, a great example would be a company goes through an acquisition of a product or another company. And how now does that impact who it is that's using the product and how they use it? Does it add new personas? Does it change the buyer journey in terms of what they need, what they feel is important for them to make a decision to the next step, and then how you support it? And so, that's, I don't know if there's an actual metric that I would be able to call out, but I don't think it's subjective.
Well, I think that the idea that you raised, where it is this ongoing, almost like a living organism over time as your product offering and the customer journey changes and the customer's needs change, you have to forever return back to identify those moments of friction. So that makes a lot of sense. Any other metrics when we talk so much in the industry about connecting to business value, delivering ROI, but are there any other frequent metrics that you feel are best in class to target when engaging with executives?
I think if you, again, take a step back and look at it from their perspective, any digital transformation, any product development that they're doing, the ultimate goal is to sell more, sell faster, or be more profitable. or at the highest level. So depending on what the product is or what the solution is that they're trying to solve for, speaking to them in that language about whether it's, sell more if it's conversion rate, or if it's sell faster if it's getting them to engage with your content at a deeper level to then take them to the next step, or if it's to be more profitable by reducing customer support calls, for instance, by having a better digital experience. I think you have to tailor those metrics that you're looking at to what those goals are that they're trying to achieve based on the business that they have.
That makes sense. Ultimately, it always needs to be fit for purpose. So
exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, otherwise it's not relevant.
Makes sense. As we heard in the video, involving executives in the research process can foster a deeper understanding of customer needs. How can UX professionals collaborate with executives to co-create research strategies, participate in user interviews, and gain firsthand insights that drive alignment and support?
That's a great question. I think you have to think about who it is that you're working with as a client. So if you're an internal employee, or if you're an external consultant, you're looking for a champion, you're looking for an influencer, you're looking for an executive sponsor. And so in that product or that project team or that group that you're working with, can you identify who those people are? And then once you identify who they are, it's really saying, okay, as we're thinking about building out a program or a study, what is it that each of these people needs from it, so that we can then, when you say co-create, make sure that we're accomplishing or getting the outcomes that they're looking for, not the answers that they're looking for necessarily. Because, you'll do research, or you may envision something, and it may be totally opposite of what they're hoping for or thinking should be the right response. Or the preferred response, and that shouldn't be part of your worry, right? That should, ultimately it is in a lot of cases, but it shouldn't be. And so as you think about the executive sponsor's goal, like really understanding what's going to move the needle for them is what's going to keep the funding in place. The champion is the one that's going to be breaking down the doors for you on a daily basis, and the influencer is going to be helping you with the leadership across the organization. So really aligning to what their goals are to then run forward with the study, I think is critical. In terms of getting them to buy in or participate, a lot of times what we find is if you have a moderated session going and there's a third anonymous person there, the participant is hesitant to share, right? And so in a lot of cases, we don't have our client on the call or watching the session. We'll record it and allow them to play it back. And the video and the verbatim responses, I think, are so powerful, because when they see someone actually trying to do a task or complete an action and they can't, and they're talking about it out loud, oftentimes just clicks with them that, wow, what is the problem here, right? That's what we've been trying to tell you. There's a problem. And, like I said, once they get a taste of actionable insights that create value, it's hard for them to ever unsee that or go back. And that, I think, once you can give them a taste, then you can start going for bigger bites, if you will. So thinking about what are some of the low risk efforts that you can start with and ease them in, so that you can get some quick wins.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. In terms of that iterative journey, easing them in, what about in terms of the market dynamics? I mean, so much of those three groups you talked about with the executive sponsor, the champion, as well as the influencer, how have you seen those needs change over the past year as the market's gone through quite a bit of disruption?
Yeah. In the last couple of years, what we've noticed is there's more and more openness and focus on the customer journey mapping and updating the personas. And a big piece of that, I believe, is with the pandemic, the shift to remote and to digital was so fast and so needed that post-pandemic, as lives have quote-unquote normalized in a different way, where there's some remote, some hybrid, some in office if it's an enterprise tool, or where buyer behavior has changed, or products that are being purchased have changed because of that shift. That's actually caused them to really want to revisit the customer journeys and update the personas. And so there's more openness to that. And I think a lot of that, again, is driven by the focus on CX improvements, because that seems to be where there's a lot of investment happening.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, given the amount of change that we've seen over the past year, the idea that you really do need to take the time to double down on your UX and CX to ensure they're current, that they're resonating with your end users, it is a very powerful thought. Appreciate that. Similarly, over the past year, although it's not necessarily new to the market, the AI and machine learning is very much top of mind. How do you feel that AI and machine learning specifically will change experience research?
It's so early for us that there's all kinds of speculation. There's lots of articles. There's lots of fear on some people's parts. I mean, you hear the on the far end of the spectrum, oh my gosh, it's going to replace researchers, and I think that's not true at all. It's going to enhance people that understand, researchers that understand how to leverage it. It's going to enhance what they're going to be able to accomplish in the period of time. I think that product and tool companies like yourselves that enable research leveraging AI and machine learning is going to be very powerful, because that's going to become a differentiator for your product versus your competitors. And I think the first place you're seeing it used are generation of some ideas in terms of the type of questions to ask or the type of research to be done, or analyzing data and looking for patterns, but then the insights still need to be teased out by that researcher. And so, there's all this promise of a machine will be able to do all of it, but, it's still a human interaction. There's still people that need to be involved. And so understanding how to craft the right questions or ask the right questions and then tease out the right insights, I think is, still years away from being done by a machine. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with your thoughts there. We're very much focused on how can we use machine learning to further the researcher's job, to further suss out what are those consistent patterns of behavior, frankly, to unlock the ability for the researcher to scale, to perform more studies and provide more insights across the organization. But I'm with you. We're not at a point in time where AI and machine learning can on itself unlock the breadth of insights required to improve that customer journey.
Yeah, that's great.
Craig, thank you so much for being on the show. If someone wants to learn more about you or UpTop, where should they go?
UpTop our website is uptopcorp.com, and we have a LinkedIn and a YouTube channel as well corporately. You can find me on LinkedIn under my first name and last name, and would love to connect.
Again, thanks so much, Craig. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Want to keep the conversation going? You can find the show notes at usertesting.com/podcast. If you haven't already, don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, or Google Play so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend or leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And until next time, this is Insights Unlocked, an original podcast from UserTesting.